I guess we might as well kick off. Nobody wants to leave now before they shut the doors? All right. All right, good morning. My name's Andrew Kosmodakis. You can see up there, commonly known as Cos for partially obvious reasons. I'm a principal infrastructure consultant based out of Wellington for Intergym. I'm also a Microsoft VTSP and private cloud and optimized desktop, which is just a fancy name, same sales pony. What I want to do is cover off some of the new features that are coming in iOS 8. Everybody attend the keynote yesterday? So you heard that as of this morning, actually as of about an hour ago, Microsoft launched globally Windows Server 2012 for general availability. New Zealand being the first, so we had Brad Burrows sitting upstairs and talking about it and launching it to the world. So right now, everybody across the Twitter sphere is talking about Server 2012 being launched. Microsoft has officially launched it, so it's available now for download and use. So hopefully after today, or this week, you guys will be able to go out and start playing with some of the goodness that's coming out with 2012, including some of the stuff I'll show you today and some of the other speakers will be showing you throughout the next few days. So just as a quick session overview, what I'm hoping you guys will get out of today, I want to show you guys how to secure your websites, how to host more secure websites, so increasing the density of your servers. Also how to ease some of the administration of some of the common tasks that happen within iOS, and also how to use some of the new features, including sandboxing applications. So there's nothing worse than an application running away and taking down your server and causing other issues for any other application running. So the key takeaway really is how to manage certificates, dynamic IP restrictions, so securing your servers a bit more, CPU throttling, which is the sandboxing, and also using server name indicator to using some of the scaling of the SSL pieces. A lot of these features are new to Server 2012, and also some of the features will be available for download for previous version of iOS. Has anybody sparked up 2012 yet? Okay, one couple, okay. You install the web server roles, like most people? No, not yet. You do pretty much what you were doing the other day, previous day of Server 2008? Yeah, a lot of people do that. They'll spark up a new operating system, add the features and roles that they had previously, and just start working with it like they did the previous time. I, in the past, used to do that quite often. So what happens when we start to look at these new servers and features that are available to us, we need to sort of pay a bit more attention to what's further down underneath the hood. And with iOS, and particularly web services role, you tick all the other authentication, basic authentication, Windows authentication, anything else you might need, and you move on, and you start doing things the way you're doing them today. If you look deeper into some of the roles and features within iOS 8, you will actually see that there's quite a few hidden features that are within there. We're talking about shared certificates. We're talking about shared configuration. We're talking about dynamic IP filtering, all these different options that are there for you that can actually benefit and help scale your servers, actually provide you a bit more security and ease the administration you've got to do on a day-to-day basis. So from a security perspective, when it comes down to securing our websites, of course, the internet's such a safe place, nobody's out to harm your web servers. So you can put them out there, and you might put them behind a firewall or a load balancer, and you leave them out there, and hey, we'll enable logging, let's see who's connecting. Under iOS 7, we had static IP restrictions. This meant that if somebody was trying to do anything malicious to my server, I had to sit down and troll through the logs and determine what was going on. And if anybody was causing me any issues or doing anything suspicious, I would then have to start adding those client IP addresses to an exception list and blocking them at that point. I was only able to offer them an HTTP 403 error, which would then say, hey, you're forbidden. You're not actually allowed to access this website anymore. iOS 8 offers us the dynamic ability to be able to restrict access for malicious use of our websites. I can actually customize what's going on and also customize the responses that's happening, that's being relayed back. If I want to give the hacker, script kiddie, a 401 response, a 403 response, a 404 response, or an abort response, I can pick which error I want. I can actually do that at a server-wide layer, or I can actually base it down to a site-by-site layer to say, hey, if you're accessing this site, I'm going to tell you that, hey, the file's not found. But if you're accessing this site, it's going to be forbidden. One of the features that comes with IIS 8 and the dynamic IP restrictions is the ability to actually, for the server software, to actually be proxy aware. So if I am living behind a firewall or an NLB or anything along those lines, and we start getting malicious attacks against our server, the ability to actually look at the X-forwarder header, and actually interpret where the client IP address is. So rather than blocking what's happening at my firewall and blocking access from my firewall to my server, blocking it right back down to the client level where it originated from. And again, this is also a downloadable option for IIS 7.5. So if you're running 2008 R2 today, you can actually start adding some of these features straight onto your servers. Pretty much following the same stance as IIS and web services, we've also got the FTP static IP filtering. Again, you used to have to sit down and troll through your logs if somebody was trying to do a brute force attack on your server. Anybody running FTP anymore? Yeah, 1, 2, cool. So having a brute force attack, everybody's coming in as administrator, trying to hack it, using password lists and dictionaries to go through. A lot of this is script kiddie stuff, and the basic people will be trying to do it. Normally, if there's a number of attempts that try to flood your FTP service, your service might hang, it might stop responding completely. So what we're doing is saying, well, if the client IP address is the same every time, or this number of client IP addresses are coming through the same, trying to authenticate and having failed logins to my server each time, block them as well, get rid of them, but still allow access for people that are actually trusted. I can say, all right, this half of the room, attack the website. This half of the room, just access it normally, or the FTP server, sorry. Come through normally. And you guys will be able to access it while the rest of you are getting blocked because of the number of attempts you're taking onto it. Okay, where are we going? All right. Of course, this screen switches off just as I go to use it. All right. So what I'm going to do is quickly show you guys just how dynamic IP restrictions can be used. I've got a simple chaos monkey here. I apologize for the resolution. And what it's going to do is fire about 600 denial of service attacks at a website for me. So I've got a couple of VMs running on my machine here, and that's going to just replicate a denial of service attack in the case of a production environment. Just as a point to note, I've got 600 zombies there, and they fire off about one every second. Under Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2, at about 100, I could actually Kumra the box. It would drop the box and render it useless. I couldn't access any resources. I couldn't run up Task Manager. I can't really do a lot with it. To actually start degrading the performance of my IIS 8 Server 2012 box, I actually had to reduce the server to its minimum requirements. So it's only got half a gig of memory, so the box starts to really play up. And I've got to fire 600 to 800 zombies to actually start degrading the performance of the server. So hopefully it will degrade, but it won't degrade too badly for us today. So that's starting to show some of the features and the stability of Server 2012 already. So we've just got standard IIS. I have FTP services and dynamic IP restriction enabled on the server. And it's just your standard IIS console. All these options can be scripted, of course, if you need to. And if I have a look at the dynamic IP restriction settings, I can start to alter some of the options that I've got available. I can create a client exception or allow list, and I can actually turn around and say, okay, unspecified clients are allowed access to the site, or I can deny all access to the site. So if there is a hosted solution that you're running and you've got internal and external network connectivity to that box, we can actually allow all the internal networks to access the website and deny them at the external level. Again, proxy mode for allowing it behind filtering, firewalls or filters. And then the different type of deny action types. What I'm going to do is just pick unauthorized, which is pretty standard. And then we've got the actual feature itself. I can deny access to this website on a malicious attack based on the number of concurrent connections or the number of HTTP requests over a specific time period. I can set it to 1 second, I can set it to 20 minutes if I need to. The difference we've got to make sure here is, in a demo purpose, I'm setting them everything quite low. This will require some testing in a production environment, so run it through a proper development environment, of course. Last thing you want to start denying all your customers access to your web services. So in the case here, I'm going to just turn on concurrent connections and just let this baby sit for a bit. And switch back to my Chaos Monkey. At this point here, I'll just start ramping up the zombies. So I can start accessing the website. This is just an expense manager application that was created for Microsoft Redmond to demonstrate some of the private cloud functionality that's available. So it doesn't do too much. So as you can see straight away, the zombies have ramped up. I've hit over my 5 concurrent connections. I've gone to refresh the page and I'm actually being denied. So this is set at the server layer. I can set different policies at a top layer of the server or different policies overriding some of the server layer settings at the website layer itself. So I could say, well, 5 concurrent connections at this layer, but I'd want different error messages for different websites. Again, all this information can be logged. So if you want to just enable logging mode only and sit there and capture this information, you can. So I'll turn this off now. And connectivity will be resumed, but it'll probably start degrading a bit because I'm getting hammered now with zombies. So while that tries to recover. Has anybody got the unfortunate job of actually having to troll through their IIS logs? Yeah, it's a hard one, eh? Yeah, time consuming, annoying, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, true. So straight away, something like this can actually help you in your day-to-day job by actually just going, well, look, I can dynamically block it. I can log this information as well if I need to. All of this is logged continually. And if I need to start denying people by default rather than allowing them access, you can. So you can start grabbing that information out of the logs and applying them to a deny list straight away. And then blocking them. That way, if they keep coming back, they're not going to get anything straight off your servers. Is anybody responsible for managing the certificates on their servers? You love it when your certificates expire in the morning and you're on your way to work? Yeah, we all do. So with IIS 7, as we all know, those certificates are bound to the web instance, the IIS instance. We've got our websites, we assign a certificate, we have to load them up onto the server manually. We can either script them up, of course, or we can use the MMC console to replace the certificates. Under IIS 8, we've introduced a new feature called Centralized Certificate Store. What this is, at the end of the day, is a UNC path living within your environment where you're storing all your certificates. You're actually putting your certificates on a file share. All your certificates, as your websites are getting requested, they're looking into this file share, they're pulling up the certificate that is relevant for their website and loading it into memory. That's the one thing to note as well, is that everything under Windows 2012 around certificates and IIS, they're loaded on demand. So certificates are not automatically loaded just because you've restarted IIS. Each time the certificate is required, it loads it into memory and keeps it in memory until you restart your server or you restart IIS. To test the scale of what the memory footprint of this is, just start firing some GET HTTP requests at your server and you'll see your certificates getting loaded up. The footprint, extremely minimal. Ooh, go back a bit. So centralized certificate stores are really a copy and paste replacement of your certificates. So if you've got a certificate that expires, literally copy and paste it. Of course, you've got to go through your issuing process. You can't bypass that. We can't automate that for you for too much. And you literally just copy and paste it into file share. A polling interval runs in the background of IIS, and it will go away and refresh your certificates based on the hash values of all your certificates. And we'll walk through that one shortly. Now, sort of fitting into the SSL space is the server name indicator. We know a number of web servers out there can already do this feature, but now built into Windows Server 2012 is the way to actually assign SSL certificates against websites based on their DNS name or host names. Of course, this feature was not supported under iOS 7, and it is supported under iOS 8. This starts to allow us to actually add greater density to our iOS instances. So in the case of a lot of people, how many people have tried hosting more than one SSL site on a web server? A lot of fluffing around, port redirections based on this name. How many people are using 8443 as another option? It's a pretty common stuff that we're trying to get everything through. What they've done is we've taken TLS and we've extended it. All it is adding additional features within the protocol, allowing us to actually identify a server based on its DNS name, but then match it to the certificate and the host header name that we're actually applying to the site. So I'll quickly do a run through of the certs. So one point to note, it is a private key, public key matchup between the certificate stores. So you do have to get your conversion process right and making sure that your public key, private keys are actually married up. So you issue your CER file, do the conversion process, and literally copy and paste them. Now, just on the controller server here that I've just got a file share. The first two certificates that you can see are actually running on the web server that I'll be walking through as we're going through. The services one is just a secondary server that I've got. It's a mid-tier server, and that's using the same repository to pull its certificate that it requires. The catch, notice the names of the servers. When I start typing them into the browser, it's actually the FQDN or the DNS name that you're using is how they're married up. And this is going to use the server name indicator layer to actually marry up those servers, those certificates as well. So that's the one little gotcha. Oh, clicking too much. Okay. So as you can see here, we've loaded, iOS has gone off, looked at the share, which is authenticated to via a service account. I'll show you the config in a second. And it's looking at all the certificates that it can enumerate within that share. So in the case here, I've only got 3. So it looks at the issued to name. It's got the issuer date, issued by, so in my case, my internal CA, and expiry period. As you can see, this is expired, and the certificate hash values. That's where it's comparing what certificates are required and when it needs to load what certificates, or if they've changed and it needs to refresh the certificate in memory. So if I have a look here, I can browse these things as you can within the normal MMC console and viewing your certificate information. Of course, if I was to do this via Explorer, being a PFX file, I have to import it first, then assign it, and then I can actually start viewing the properties of it. Within the iOS environment, it already knows the certificate and passes the proper metadata back to you. So in the case here, I've got a nice certificate that has expired. Nice and simple. There's actually 2 of them. So here, look at the feature settings. I've just got a UNC path that I'm pointing to. It's a share. It's a viewable share. Should have made it hidden, but anyway. And I've got a service account that's got full access to that share. I've restricted everybody else, bar my domain admins, of course, and entered this service account user ID and password. If you have a look down below, optional is depending on how your certificates are set up and you're exporting your private key, public key information, you may have to put in your private key password for this. So in the case here, all my passwords have had to be identical on all those certificates. So it's a matter of standardizing some of the things in your environments as well. And it's going away, looking at all of them, interpreting the certificates, pulling the information it needs, and then just holding fire pretty much. So once this thing catches up, so we're all used to seeing that at some point in time. It's worse than when it's for us in the mornings. And our users start complaining about it. Can you guys see the data that appears? Yeah, that's all right. Don't have to zoom in or anything. So again, the exact same certificate that I was looking at before from this web server itself is being replicated here back at the client layer, as you would expect. In a multi-server web farm, having a centralized certificate store allows me to update certificates once. So I copy them into the location it needs, point all my servers to it, which is PowerShell, registry key changes, and you can actually apply it. It's nice and simple and automatable. And all your servers across a SharePoint farm or any other farm that you're running will actually talk to that repository and load the required certificates that they need. Therefore, one point of update. We don't have to worry about changing anything after that.
Can you have two certificates with different expiry periods in the same folder?
Yeah, you can have, think about it from a day-to-day perspective. You're not going to issue certificates for your entire environment on one day. So over a period of time, you're going to keep updating it. Yeah.
You have to have two at any time.
You what, sorry?
You have to have two. One is expiring and new one.
Yeah. In the case of here, you'd actually just replace the certificate. So if you've got a new certificate, you copy it over and replace what's there. There's no point having a certificate that's going to expire. It won't actually look at it from perspective of, some people may have a business reason, that's absolutely fine. But in the case of this feature, it is a matter of you replace it, it becomes available straight away. It is an instant apply within a polling interval curve, so it's sort of instant. Yeah. So by default, IIS will poll every 5 minutes looking for any certificate changes. You can change that setting to be whatever you need it for your business requirements. In the case of here, I've set it to the minimum value, which is 1 minute. So you're going to have to listen to me ramble a little bit longer for 1 minute while those changes apply. So while we're talking about that, I'll quickly show you guys the server name indicator stuff. We're being able to marry up SSL with host and virtual directory names to offer more scalable SSL sites within your IIS instances. And of course, from an SNI perspective, it's about getting one IP address responding. So in the case here, my server's only got one IP address. I'm getting multiple websites with multiple different DNS names, all responding off the same IP address, but offering different certificates and different information back to the end users. So all it is a checkbox. I tell it that, hey, you have to check that the host name or the DNS name that's coming, that it's been requested, is matched up. Therefore, match up the SSL site to that request. And that was what gets passed back to the end user at the end of the day. And again, everything's listening on port 443. If I go back to another site with some security on it, you'll see the exact same information is applied there. Same IP address, same port number, just a different host name. And again, I've told this to use the centralized certificate store. So this is looking off at the UNC path to gather the information that it requires for certificates. One thing to note, actually, is if I've got the centralized certificate store enabled on my top layer, IIS layer, I don't have to use centralized certificate stores for every website. I can have websites using the traditional binding method, or I can say, all right, individual websites, I want you to use this path, I want you to use that path. So you can get quite granular in some of the features, some of the way you handle your certificates if you have a business requirement to be able to handle it differently. For some government customers, the GCSB may require that you have a different approach to how you handle it. And is this refreshed yet? There we go. So now we've got valid certificates at least. Cool. So all those the certificate hashtags have actually been updated now. IIS is going to look into the store realize that those hashtags have changed, and actually reload the certificates back into memory for me. If I close this bad boy out. It's a horrible yellow, I know. Oh. The demo gods love me, obviously. Yeah. It's always the case, isn't it? Come on, wakey, wakey. Oh, well, there's no love in this world anymore with products. Okay, that's better. It's taking a bit longer now. So technically what this should be doing in the background, which it did not do, we'll move on from that anyway, is actually look into the store and actually update it for me. The fact that IIS is seeing that certificate is a good start. Unfortunately, the client doesn't want to pass that information back down for it. So hopefully if the refresh interval kicks in, I'll come back to it in a second. Okay. Now we talk about the ability to be able to scale your servers around allowing resources to be available for different types of applications or services within that environment. So when we have applications that are handed over to us, we, as IT administrators, we deploy them. We trust that they've been tested. We trust that they're well written. Unfortunately, there are times when you do get a problematic application. That problematic application can then cause issues for good applications that are running within your environment. You may have a sales application that's running, and that starts causing issues for your finance team. Under IS 7, the CPU throttling allowed us to actually restrict the amount of issues that were happening on a server, the amount of CPU that was being consumed by this by IIS. Unfortunately, it monitored at an entire server layer. It monitored CPU based on the entire server's CPU load. At the end of the day, the only configurable option we had was to terminate IIS. So it would actually restart IIS on us, terminating the actual instance that was running, allowing it to restart and start consuming low amounts of resources. This is really good from an IT admin perspective because at the end of the day, our server's healthy, it's staying up, and we're able to have a server that's meeting some sort of reliability status. From a user perspective or a customer's perspective, especially if you're a hoster or offering external websites, this wasn't good. Your customers need to be able to access your websites. Your application needed to be available, but you're terminating it because your application is actually consuming too many resources. So it's that balance between IT administration and customer service. IS 8 now, with CPU throttling, actually offers us a lot more granularity. We can actually restrict the CPU based on tenant. Is everybody aware of the whole concept of the multi-tenanting in IIS and Windows Server 2012 multi-tenancy? It's about getting more applications and services onto your box without affecting or cross-pollinating with each other. At the end of the day, you're adding more websites in an IIS instance. But we want to make sure that the performance of one application or service doesn't impact the other. And this is where the multi-tenancy part of Server 2012 is actually giving us that granularity. We can start to say, all right, the CPU threshold, well, it's actually based on the worker process now. We're actually monitoring the individual worker processes for each of those applications or services. And that includes the application pool information. We're actually looking at options. We can actually set options like, okay, if the entire server is busy, then do this. If it's just this website that's consuming resources, then do this. We actually have a number of additional options now. We can say, throttle that application or service. Throttle the application or service based on the load of the server, which takes us back to the IIS 7 features. Or we can turn around and say, kill the W3P W3WP process. In other words, giving us the same thing, or just leave it alone. Let the box run away and do what it's doing, and hopefully it will recover. So there's nothing worse than having these problematic applications start to starve at good applications and taking the resources that we need to offer quality of service back to our customers. If you're a hosting customer, this is quite critical. And that could be, I'm just hosting a website externally. It doesn't have to be a hosting application or a hosting person that's looking after it. We're typically talking about just getting applications out there to the users. Also, what happens if you have got the sales and the finance team on the same server? They argue about having to pay for services within your organization, so you want to increase the density on your servers, you add more websites or more applications to these servers. So you need to make sure that you're not impacting other departments who may be paying for the kit and another department's just leveraging that environment and that equipment. So what I'll do is I'll run through the CPU throttling and see if the certificates have gone and updated itself now. And has it? Yay! And in a great few minutes, the 1 minute polling interval, we've now got the new certificates sitting on the server. And that was done with nothing more than a copy and paste of the new certificates into the central store. So of course now it's loaded into memory. I can now access it and my website just functions as it should before. The one thing to note about the CPU throttling is it may not be something that you're looking at today. It may be something that you want to keep in the back of your mind, or it may end up being a situation where you actually have to apply it on the fly. It is a setting that does get applied live. It won't restart IIS on you. So if you actually have a website that is constantly causing you problems throughout a day, you can actually go and apply that option, if you're running Server 2012, of course, on the fly, apply the thresholds that you want to set, apply the action that you want to set, and let it go. And then straight away, within a couple of minutes, and based on my demo experience, it ain't going to be a couple of minutes, it's going to drop everything down to the CPU settings that you're actually telling it to do. And again, it's for those worker processes. So when you start seeing runaway worker processes, these can be applied on the fly. So by default, it's 1/1000th of a percent, so which is perfect for when we're in a rush. And we're taking no action. We've got no limits, so 0 is we're not applying any limits to any of our worker processes, and we're actually just saying, just let it go. So right now I can hit my server and let the CPU processes just run out of control, and that's where we're going to bring up Task Manager. And for the purposes of this demo, I'm just let you know, is I'm actually going to be running over HTTP. It's a lot easier to see what's going on under an HTTP environment around the worker processes. When we enable HTTPS and CPU throttling, it actually gets all encapsulated in LSA, and then it follows through to the worker processes. So you actually start to see 5 or 6 different things happening, and for a demo purpose, it's actually harder to actually show you guys, here's what the process is happening, here's how it's applying, here's what's happening in the rules. So we're not avoiding HTTPS, we're just showing HTTP on the pure fact that it's easier. You go down here. Let's wait for the second page to load up. Okay, so in the case here, I've got 2 different applications running within the same IIS instance. Both of them are running on port 80 and port 443, using all the features I've been talking about so far. And at the end of the day, I'm going to just start doing a denial of service attack on this primary website here. I want to show you guys how the CPU is just going to start spiking out, start maxing out, start consuming all the resources on my server. The secondary application can run fine for a while, and then eventually you're going to start getting degraded performance, and it's actually going to cause us more of an issue than anything. So we're going to show how CPU throttling then works into it by allowing us to then scale out other applications and leave those applications running while restricting our bad app. And in this place, sorry, switch back. Get the zombies going. So straight away, we're going to see the IIS worker process start to kick in. That first worker process that I've highlighted is the primary website. That's Expense Manager itself. Expense Manager 2 has now sparked off its own IIS worker process and living in the background. Not much is happening in there, and it's just ticking away nicely. We start to see the CPU start to max out, drop down a bit, try to handle it. Windows is trying to actually control what's going on here. But unfortunately, we can't. Eventually, this box is going to become unstable, and I'm not going to be able to use it too well, again, because I've restricted all the resources on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I don't want this app pool or this website to take over more than 40% of the CPU. And if I do, and if it does, throttle it. I want to throttle the experience that's going on with that website. So on the fly now, I've applied that change. And we're going to start to see that the worker processes are going to get, we get initial worker process, new worker processes get kicked into life, and IIS transfers the roles from one worker process to another worker and starts to restrict it around the 40% mark. It's never going to be exactly 40%. It always hovers over and above. Sometimes you get up to 50%, but it drops back down to around the 40% mark. And we can see there we're holding at about 40% now, and I can actually switch back to the other client and just start to get a bit of a throttled experience. As you can see, the secondary website, which I've got no throttling or restrictions applied to, loaded normally. This one's still thinking about it, still running the donut at the top, it's still gathering some of the data and checking all the data in the background and passing it back to the client and the client and the user. And it's still thinking. And in the background, we're still sitting around that 40% mark with the worker process. Sorry? They're not absolute percentages. It's based on the percentage of time. So what it's doing is saying, okay, sorry, not time, CPU usage. So it's more of an average than anything else, and it keeps it around the 40% mark.
So I can't say if nothing else is busy, just give it 100%.
No, not that I'm aware of, sorry, but have a chat to me afterwards. I'll see what I can dig up for you, actually. I hadn't thought about that one. And what, sorry? Oh, yeah, but that's across virtual machines and services, though, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. No, come and grab me afterwards. I'll see what I can dig up for you. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll kill the zombies and we'll just watch the CPU fall back into place. What I want to do is quickly just wrap up a few things, and what I want to do is just give you guys some experiences from the field. We've been working with Server 2012 now for about 9 months and using it in quite a few different type of demonstration environments, application environments, and deployments, to be honest. And there's a whole bunch of things that have tripped us up while we've been going that actually it took us to go to the product team to get a few things sorted. And with the product team, we've sat down and said, well, these are quite a few common things that need to happen, and these are quite a few common things that we do within a normal organization. So I want to offer you guys some of the tips that we learned along the way from the field. So centralized certificate store. It is enabled via IIS Manager, as you saw, or you can do it via PowerShell. So therefore offering you a little bit more flexibility in how you do it and also a repeatable process to be able to deploy it across multiple servers within your organization. It's just straight, simple, enable Web Central's cert provider. And of course, everybody goes looking for that. Like I mentioned, the default polling interval is 5 minutes. Haven't come across anything where there's a limit on how often it polls. I guess it's a time thing. The lowest limit you can go to is 1 minute. And of course, the certificates are loaded in memory every time the website is requested. Does anybody here use the Web Deploy or MS Deploy web kits? All right, cool. It's a better experience than most times when we talk about it. For those who don't use it, Web Deploy is really a simplified deployment mechanism for IIS. So being able to deploy your pages, your scripts, and everything across your organization from environment to environment quite simply. Oh, wrong button. It gets so simple that you can actually get your developers to pump them directly out of Visual Studio into what they call a deploy package. The deploy package at the end of the day is a fancy zip file where, pretty much like all our Office documents and things of today. If you have a look into it, all it is the directory structure. But there's a lot of metadata that's stored within that directory structure to allow it to remember the path that you want to go to. So if there's a common path that you deploy to, say, I don't know, CIIS my website, it will remember that information. You can override that information with command lines. So it's a simple command line tool. You actually pass the command line, and you can overwrite where you're moving that website to. So if you're going to do through a staging environment before you go to full-blown production, you can actually override that, then rerun the script again without that command line and actually overwrite what's there today. The package is smart. The deployment kit is smart enough that it actually looks into whatever existing website you have on your server, also within the MS Deploy package, and actually detect any changes that are required. So replace the files that it only needs to, or synchronize the files that you need to. If somebody's gone and edited a file on your web server to resolve an issue in production that you don't see in any other environment, it won't go away and necessarily replace that file. You can actually get it to prompt you, almost like a what if in PowerShell. The other thing is it does handle ASP.NET and PHP 2, which is quite cool. And it is the native deployment package or custom resource type built into Virtual Machine Manager 2012. For those who automate their website creation, anybody into that? I prefer to do repetitive. Nah. Okay. The SSL flag 3 that you can see on that second to last line, that is enabling centralized certificate store. It's not very clear in the app CMD file right now. I haven't checked an RTM, to be honest. And then what we do is we apply that, and then you're using NetSSH to bind the certificate store to those websites. It's quite a simple command. A lot of people who are doing the automation will know that command. It's the SSL flag that's the difference. Big pardon, sorry? Yeah, it will be available after this. Hopefully they sanitize my comments. So hopefully today I've been able to show you guys some of the new features that are in IIS 8 with Server 2012, which again is available as of today. Some of these things will help you with reduce the amount of administration time you need to do some of the common and simple tasks within your environment. Also offer you a lot more security and protection from any malicious people out on the net, or even within your organization. Some people do it for, may not realize that they're hammering your website because they're just impatient. F5, F5, what the hell's going on here? You can actually start to enable that dynamically and allow your other users to continue normally. So thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully you gathered something out of that. Just on a bit of a side note, tomorrow, 4:30, I think it is. Yeah, one of the gentlemen I work with, Bevan Sinclair, is presenting on monitoring applications with System Center 2012. Anybody using System Center Operations Manager in their environment? Cool. This is about managing the end-to-end life cycle and monitoring and availability of your application. There's some quite cool demonstrations on code and everything and how you can get it back to your developers and start to resolve issues at a specific level. The exams for Server 2012 are going to be announced soon. I'm not sure 100% which one it is, but there's nothing really specific to IIS, of course. My email address above, if you've got any questions, feel free to contact me. My Twitter handle, I'm not much of a Twitterer, so if you want to be bored, you can follow me. We'll go from there. Don't forget to fill out your registrations, check out the hub downstairs, and of course the general Microsoft resources available to you on TechNet and everything. So thank you very much.